Hello, I'm Martin Oates. Coming up on the Sunday Politics here in the South West. And for the next 20 minutes, I'm joined by the Lib Dem peer Judith Jolly and by Ernie Warrender, who's hoping to stand for UKIP in June's general election. Welcome to you both. Now, to kick things off, should this election be all about Brexit? Ernie?
Well, it's probably going to be, but I mean, it's virtually a cynical hijacking of democracy, isn't it? I mean, you've had Northern Ireland, I feel terribly sorry for, because they're going to have to vote again. This isn't about electing a government. In my view, that's a pretty much done deal. This is about electing an effective opposition. And what you've got is 17.3 million people voted for Brexit. Brexit, leave, exit. They knew what they were voting for very clearly. And there is serious concern now that Theresa May will not deliver on immigration. People are worried about fisheries. UKIP, by putting some UKIP MPs into Parliament to counterbalance the virtually 100% remain of the Lib Lab SNP, has to be done now. This is a golden opportunity.
OK, and of course, Judith, you and your leader Tim Farron want to make this all about Brexit as well, but of course from the opposing side.
Well, no, I mean, we were watching something about manifestos earlier, and our manifesto certainly isn't going to be all about Brexit. There's a whole issue around health and social care. That's at the moment. It looks as if it's almost been knocked into the long grass, but it's a disaster waiting to happen. So it isn't all about Brexit, and clearly we have a very distinctive view on Brexit, which is the first time that I think you and I so far will seriously disagree. But
there'll be more of that, I suspect.
There will be more of that.
Sure, can find something.
As the programme wears on, as it must now, I'm afraid. As once again, the South West looks like playing a central role in the election, with particular focus here on the traditional tussle between the Conservatives and the Lib Dems. The former will be fighting to keep all the seats they gained so dramatically 2 years ago. The latter will be equally determined to get them back. And keen not to be left out, some of the other parties in the fray are already talking about pre-election deals to try to influence the outcome. Here's Tamsin Melville.
Hello, team.
Perfect timing to rally the troops. Tim Farron rolled into Truro on local election business just an hour after Theresa May called the snap election. But the Lib Dems, the party of pavement politics, say they're election ready.
The Liberal Democrats have been calling for an early election, and we've been ready for an early election. And so we say bring it on.
The party machine's already up and running, knocking on doors for the local elections. But with the June the 8th poll, familiar faces are encouraging tactical voting, where the Lib Dems are in a strong second place.
In those seats, we would clearly, be encouraging, supporters, indeed even members of parties that have come third, fourth, fifth last time, to perhaps think carefully about whether they want to have an MP who maybe isn't entirely to their liking, but at least A, is not a Conservative, and B, is someone who at least is on the progressive centre-left.
There's one place in Cornwall where the Green vote alone would have been enough to get the Lib Dems over the line back in 2015. This is Andrew George's old constituency, where the Conservatives beat him by 2,500 votes. The Green vote was more than 3,000. The maths is simple, but for now, cards are being played close to chests.
Certainly there are places, St Ives and others around the country, where Greens can make a difference, and other constituencies, the Lib Dems themselves can make a difference to the outcome. So what we want to be able to do is to have some talks to look at this as fast as possible, given the very short time that we have before the election, to see if we can find any agreements.
But as in any battle, it's not all one-sided. Some in UKIP, keen to keep Brexit top of the agenda, are considering playing a similar card.
In my opinion, is that we need to be very clever and not necessarily stand wherever we can, like we have done in the past. In the referendum, George Eustace was superb. He led from the front, as did Cheryl Murray and Scott Mann. So I don't see why we would want to consider getting rid of any of those three.
And while the Greens this week made an offer to step aside in Plymouth, where the race is traditionally Labour versus Tory, the question is, should the Lib Dems be doing the same?
There will be places in the country where, Liberal Democrat supporters would be wise to vote Labour if they want to unseat a Conservative MP.
Parties of all colours will be holding talks this week, with any deals needed to be decided on very soon. amid warnings from some Conservatives that electoral pacts are undemocratic.
We heard George Eustace, the MP for Campbell and Redruth, mentioned there in the report. He joins us now from London. George, we heard there from Bob Smith, your UKIP opponent in 2015. I think the number of votes he garnered was about the size of your majority. Presumably you would be delighted if he offered to stand aside this time.
Well, look, I think the reality is, and I was a former UKIP candidate in 1999, but their job is done. This country voted to leave the European Union. UKIP was a single-issue party set up to campaign for that. And what we all need to do now is, regardless of which way people voted in the referendum, is bring the country together, unite, and send the best possible negotiator we can to get this right. And that has to be Theresa May. And that's why we need to have this general election to clear the air, so that we can have strong and stable leadership going into these vitally important negotiations.
OK, I'll come back to the politics in a minute. I just want to come to this issue of electoral pacts and parties standing aside. Ernie, you've heard your UKIP colleague there, Bob Smith, saying that in 3 seats in Cornwall, they shouldn't stand. I mean, you're hoping you will stand, you can stand.
I have to say that I would sooner stick my sensitive places in the mouth of a hungry lion than do a pact with the Tories. We saw what they did to the Liberal Democrat Party. They destroyed them. The people...
Your job is done, George, you say. That's
yes, I heard
a reasonable
that.
Point, isn't it?
No, it isn't. The job isn't done, because when you look at the papers and all of the comments, Theresa May was a Remainer, her Chancellor was a Remainer, the Brexit committee is 11-7 Remain, chaired by Hilary Benn. No, the job is not done in any way, shape or form, and you have to have UKIP MPs. Plus, it is not a single-issue party. When you look at our manifesto, suddenly the Tories have had a Damascene change on grammar schools, the National Health Service, respect for the armed forces. It's not a single issue anymore.
Do you think George Eustace will face a UKIP challenge?
Paul
Nuttall, the leader, was suggesting this morning this standing aside could happen.
I personally, my own personal view, and we are all inputting into our manifestos at the moment, is you must give 4 million people the opportunity to tick a purple and yellow box. That is hijacking democracy if you don't do it.
OK, Judith, in terms of these pacts, Andrew George also said this week that he would actually consider it wise for Lib Dem supporters in some constituencies to vote Labour.
This is nothing new. I mean...
Well, all right, people voted tactically. It's new, isn't it, to have parties actually saying vote for an opposing party?
Certainly, the Green Party were very helpful to us when we won Richmond quite recently.
It's very recent, yeah.
Yeah, very recently. I am not party to any deals or any conversations about deals that are happening in Cornwall, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were going, if conversations were happening. But whether they're actually going to be deals or not, I really don't know. But again, we are really very keen to give the country an opportunity to vote Lib Dem in the same sort of way that Ernie has just described.
Can I just, sorry to interject, if I could just say that at the end of the day, when you say a deal is a two-way event.
Yeah.
And it won't be with the Tory party or the Labour Party or the Lib Dems.
Well, can I just come in on here perhaps and just say, let the other parties talk about pacts and coalitions, but this is not a time for some coalition between UKIP, Labour, the Green Party and the Lib Dems to try and do negotiation. This is a time for strong and stable leadership,
George,
and that is why we need Theresa May doing that.
The Lib Dems would actually go into a big 4-way pact against the government.
Well, you're all talking about pacts, and the point is this is not a time for some chaotic coalition and some pact. This is a time for clarity of leadership to get this negotiation right, and that needs to be Theresa May at the negotiating table, and that's what people should vote for.
George, it looks and sounds as if you're cutting to the chase in terms of what might be one of the main messages from the Conservative campaign, which is basically you risk getting this coalition of chaos. Of course, last time you pushed the line that there was a risk of getting Ed Miliband's Labour ruling the country with the SNP. Isn't there a problem that with the polls as they are, if people think the Conservatives are likely to get a thumping majority in places like Cornwall and Devon, they might say, well, if that's going to happen anyway, we'd rather have an opposition MP and not give the government this thumping, overwhelming dominance at Westminster?
Well, I know, and you know too, Martin, that there are no safe seats in the West Country. The West Country is always hotly contested. I was first elected with a majority of just 66. I understand the volatility of the West Country, and we're taking nothing for granted. We're going to be out there campaigning day in, day out, getting across the message that this country needs strong, stable leadership now, but also getting across the record that Conservatives have delivered as MPs. You know, when we had Lib Dems, they used to just point at problems and solve nothing. Since we've had Conservative MPs, local Conservative candidates and MPs elected, they've actually delivered, getting investment in roads, getting investment in hospitals and infrastructure, creating new jobs. That's what we need.
Judith.
I actually would take issue with that. Certainly it's the role of an MP to, we were having this discussion earlier, to actually talk to ministers and push things on. But to suggest that Lib Dems never did that, I think that is really very disingenuous.
But isn't it the case, and if this is one of the key messages from the Conservatives in this election, at the last election, the message that voting Lib Dem could facilitate some kind of Labour SNP coalition was deadly to you?
It was, yes.
So if they're successful this time in saying you'll get this coalition of chaos, you should be worried.
Yes. No, yes and no. I'm not worried. We're going out on the doors. We're explaining what our policy is. We're explaining what the rest of our policies are. Our manifesto will be out within the next week, I would imagine, along with all the others, and we will be doing that. And in fact, I mean, we've just had to say to all the people who are campaigning for the local council, you know, thank you very much, guys, but you can have a day off after the election, and we're back on the doors. And so that's what we shall do.
Can I just say that George is saying what a great job the Tories have done. I remember them campaigning very strongly on getting broadband communication systems going in the West Country. It is better in Africa. In parts of Africa, you get better reception. It's appalling. I'm on a science and technology park.
That's a simple nonsense. Cornwall has actually got high-speed broadband.
Big problem in Devon and Somerset, to be fair.
Devon and Somerset, George.
Well, we've got some very... well, they should follow the Cornish example.
But they had European money, but that's opening up another debate.
Right. We've given money. There's £500 million that's gone into rural broadband. There's another 10 million that's gone into piloting broadband in the most remote areas, and we're constantly putting money to roll out broadband in more rural areas.
OK, George Eustace, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
If the last election was disastrous for the Lib Dems, it wasn't great for Labour either, leaving Exeter's Ben Bradshaw the party's only MP west of Bristol. In June, Labour will be hoping to regain at least one seat in Plymouth, but the selection of candidates is still to be finalised, and opinion as to whether the present leadership offers a glorious opportunity or a massive hindrance remains divided. Here's John Henderson.
You have got 50 days between now and possibly changing the shape of this country.
A rare insight into the ranks of Corbyn's foot soldiers. No covert ops here, they say, just passionate politics.
How about we have a session where we start to really look at the policies so that we understand them?
But there are a few thorny questions, chiefly who fronts up and leads the charge in Plymouth, whose name will be spelt out on the ballot paper.
And I hereby declare that Oliver Colville is duly elected to serve as the Member of Parliament for the said constituency.
The Sutton and Devonport seat is number 8 on Labour's national target list. At number 14 is the neighbouring constituency of Moorview, lost by Alison Seebeck in 2015. She, a Corbyn sceptic, who this week said she wouldn't be going over the top this time round. For those leading Corbyn's ever-loyal brigade in Plymouth, a vacancy for one of their own?
I'm going to say to you fairly clearly that if somebody doesn't feel it's right for them to campaign as a candidate with Jeremy Corbyn as leader, then I don't want them to. You know, I want people who are real. I don't want people who are fake. They're not faking it, they're actually believing it, they're living it. They want to be a Labour candidate and they want to be part of a Labour government led by Jeremy Corbyn.
In Plymouth, they say they'll campaign for whoever is selected. But this grassroots organisation that backs Jeremy Corbyn has been likened to Nazi stormtroopers by one of Labour's own. Michael Foster ran for the party in Camborne and Redruth in 2015. He now says traditional party members in Cornwall are being frozen out by Corbynistas.
And what is very, very clear is that Momentum, who are now the majority of members, only support their own. There was no support when I went out with a couple of times with candidates at all from those Momentum members.
The region's only Labour MP has also had well-catalogued disagreements with Mr Corbyn, In one instance, Mr Bradshaw described the leadership as a destructive combination of incompetence, deceit and menace.
I think a lot of my colleagues, as you've seen today, have taken a good hard look at themselves and their consciences and have come out and said they just don't think Jeremy has got the right qualities to take us into an election, and in fact if he did, it would be a disaster.
Unsurprisingly, that's not how they see it at the Momentum meeting in Plymouth.
The buzz I'm getting from the meeting is enthusiasm. People are excited by the upcoming election. Like I said in that room tonight, some of us never thought we were going to get the opportunity to do this in our lives, and suddenly for that moment to arrive, it's like it gives you goosebumps.
The decision on who fights for Labour and where now rests with the top brass, who say they'll have their men or women in place by the 2nd of May.
Well, Ben Bradshaw now replaces George Eustice in the hot seat at Broadcasting House in London. Welcome to the programme, Ben.
Hello, Martin.
Do you not now find yourself in the position you predicted a few months ago of being led into a disaster?
Look, that was during a leadership election.
But what's changed in terms of your assessment of Jeremy Corbyn?
Let's have a reality check, Martin, shall we? We're currently more than 20 percentage points behind the Conservatives in the opinion polls. That is landslide territory for the Tories. So anybody, for the sake of our democracy, who doesn't want a one-party state in the southwest, for the sake of our schools, our hospitals, or who is worried about the extreme version of Brexit that the Tories are pursuing, will be doing everything they can in this election, wherever they live, to support the candidate who has the best chance of beating a Conservative.
But can your assessment of the party's leadership have changed radically in a few months?
No, it hasn't, but what I'll be campaigning on, and indeed have been yesterday, we had more than twice the number of people out supporting me in Exeter on the first day of the campaign yesterday, is on my local record. People in Exeter on June the 8th will be voting for the person they want to be their local Member of Parliament for the next 5 years. They're not voting for a party leader or for a government. The result in Exeter won't affect the national result in that respect, and Labour supporters and members across our region will be doing their very best to maximise the Labour vote, to avoid the terrible prospect of a landslide Conservative government completely unchecked, taking its axe to our public services, our schools, our NHS, and pushing this extreme form of Brexit outside the single market and the customs union, which would be extremely bad for prosperity, jobs and investment in our region.
So are you accepting there is no prospect of a Labour government and Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister?
Well, I'm asking for you to get real. You know, we are 20
points
behind. Well, the reality is we are 20 points behind in the opinion polls. And don't forget, some people may say, oh, the opinion polls may be wrong. The problem is in the past, when they've been wrong, they've underestimated the Conservative lead. That is where we are. So we are in a fight against a Tory landslide, and in the southwest we're in a fight against a one-party state. I think that would be terrible for our democracy, terrible for the country, and for all of those people who need some sort of scrutiny and challenge of what would be the most right-wing Conservative government in our country's history.
And just quickly, we were talking earlier about this progressive alliance idea and Greens standing down in favour of Labour candidates or Lib Dem candidates. Have you any sympathy with this?
Well, I don't know what's happening about that, but look, I have a lot more faith in the intelligence of the British people to do the right thing. In Exeter or in Plymouth, if you don't want a hard Brexiteer right-wing Tory, you vote for me or you vote for the Labour candidates in Plymouth. Elsewhere, the public are perfectly able to make up their own judgment as to who has got the best chance of beating the Conservatives, and I'm sure they will.
OK, Judith and Ernie, you are both in different ways fishing potentially for Labour voters.
Yes, and certainly we're very optimistic that we're going to pick Labour voters up. We're certainly picking them up when we talk to them.
Specifically on this anti-Brexit platform.
But just generally, I think Labour voters are not terribly happy with Jeremy Corbyn as leader. We're going out knocking on doors at the moment on the Cornwall Council campaign, and people are saying, the Labour voters are saying, yes, we will support you.
OK, quickly, Ernie. You're in a similar position. There is this sort of ambition, I think, from the Prime Minister to gain Labour voters in the north, Eurosceptic Labour voters in the north. You'd like to do the same thing?
Well, not just in the north, to be honest. I mean, I myself did a couple of years on the assembly line at Ford's in Dagenham. You know, this has become not the Labour Party I knew as a lad. Basically, Yes, Ben is right. There needs to be credible and strong opposition because, as I said earlier, you're not voting for a government. It's pretty much a done deal. You're voting for a strong, credible opposition, checks and balances. And if you vote Labour, Lib Dem, SNP, you are just going to get us, well, you'll get us another referendum if they had their way.
Just quickly, Ben, have you got any preferences for candidates in the Plymouth seats, which of course are generally in contention for Labour?
Well, I understand that the excellent Luke Pollard has already been confirmed as our candidate in one of those seats. He had a great result, came very close last time, and I'm sure our candidate in the other Plymouth seat will be of equally high calibre, and they'll be working extremely hard.
OK, Ben, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Time now for our regular roundup of the political week in just 60 seconds.
The Prime Minister says she'll be visiting Cornwall in the next few weeks. Why would that be, I wonder?
But I recognise the importance of small businesses in Cornwall, and I look forward to visiting Cornwall in the next few weeks and being able to talk to him and others about the importance of small businesses in the county.
A scrappage scheme for diesel cars is in order, according to Devon MP and EFRA Committee Chairman Neil Parish.
So this is a policy with significant public support, especially as we move, dare I say, towards a general election, but that's not in my speech.
Calls for the law to allow Cornish flags on number plates and driving licences.
I believe that it would be a great way to celebrate the new Great Britain that we want post the membership of the EU.
And North Cornwall MP Scott Mann runs his first London Marathon.
I'm hoping to raise £3,000 so I can give £1,000 to each of my cottage hospitals. So please sponsor me and wish me luck for the race.
Judith, you're a Cornish peer, of course. Would you like a Cornish flag legally on your number plate?
Well, there are loads on a number.
I've noticed this. I noticed this.
I mean, I don't think you need a law to do this.
Well, I think it's a debate about whether it's legal at the moment.
I don't think it'll stop the Cornish doing it.
We perhaps will pass over for that. Ernie, I mean, to be fair, he was interested, a couple of MPs were interested in Cornish flags, but the point was made by the MP who tabled the debate that he would like to see regional flags from other counties, other parts of the White Rose of Yorkshire, for instance. Any sympathy for that?
Well, I don't know. As the only National Party spokes for small business who is actually a Brexiteer, the rest are living in the past, I think it'd be a great fillip for the number plate industry. They'd have to all change their number plates. They do it in Australia, don't they? I think West Australia is the friendly state. Queensland's the sunshine state.
That sounds a bit like government intervention to me. You're a small stater.
Yeah. No, certainly not.
Well,
small business. Small business.
I can tell you that Scott Mann has completed the London Marathon. We must leave you now to go back to Andrew in London for the week ahead.